Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hope and Healing Chats, where we discuss everything dealing with sex addiction and partner betrayal trauma. Our goal is that these conversations assist you on your healing journey and help you to restore hope. I'm your host, Monifa Ellis-Addy. I am a CSAT and a betrayed partner specialist. I work at Banyan Therapy Group in Los Angeles, where I help individuals and couples manage sex addiction issues. Today, we'll be talking about the new year, but first, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Congratulations, you made it through the holidays, but now it's time to plan for the new year. So, to help us dive into this topic, we're bringing back the clinical director of Banyan Therapy Group. He is also a CSAT, a betrayed partner specialist, and a certified disclosure guide, who also co-wrote the Full Disclosure series and many other books in this field, like Healthy Boundaries and Building True Intimacy. Bringing back, once again, Dan Drake. Welcome.
Thanks, Monifa. It's good to be with you.
So the new year, right? We just got through the stressful holidays. Now it's time to get into this whole new year vibe. Where do we start? If we're dealing with sex addiction, betrayed partner, as a couple, individuals, where do we go from here?
I had like two thoughts that happened right in my head at the same time. So I guess we'll see. I don't know. Maybe there's two. The first thing I think is what most people think about with the new year is resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can start there, at least just if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's at least what I associate. Okay, we're ending one year, we're starting a new year. I don't know. I don't love the idea of resolutions. I like the idea of intentions. I like the idea of like making it more tangible, but I feel like most people I talk to about resolutions, it seems to be these unattainable goals that you throw out for the first two weeks of the year, and then you don't meet them. So you say, screw it. And then that's it. So that's not what I want for this. I mean, I guess I think of it, maybe thinking of it like a bigger 10th step. If someone's in recovery and they understand that 10th, meaning like what reflecting and don't just wait till the new year to do this. This can be something that all through December, let's say, or if we're in the new year, that's fine. But what went well last year? What didn't go so well? What are some things that, I could have improved on and I could grow in? And I'm thinking on the addict side versus the betrayed person. What could I have done better? And then what are some of those things? How can I use that as motivation for the new year and focus on those things and target those in new ways? What would it look like at December 31st of this year, when I'm getting into the end of this year, that I really worked on those things, and I'm in a much better place this year than I was last year. And then work backwards. Like, okay, if I'm going to be in this place, how do I, work backwards? What's 6 months look like from now? What's 1 month look like? How do I show up and kind of make it more tangible goals towards getting there? So, I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of the betrayer in the situation, but I mean, I think we could go with couples or the betrayed. Obviously there's different things. I wouldn't think of it in the same way. I think, what does healing look like? What for the betrayed partner, what would I want to experience this year differently? Maybe by the end of this year, what are some of those things that I would hope for more for myself or the relationship, kind of creating a vision for themselves for the end of the year. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts.
No, I agree. I feel like resolutions can be a bit shame-inducing.
Nobody meets the resolutions. I've never met anyone that's like, I did great.
No. I think about when I go to the gym, like January, it's so many people. February, it starts to teeter off by March. It's like desert land. Nobody's really there anymore.
Right.
It's just all these high, goals, and it's all in. Like it's either all in or all out, which once again, once you have that frame of mind thinking, it's going to induce some shame. So I like the idea of being intentional, even on the betrayed partner side, if we're thinking of, okay, what is my vision for the future? What does my healing look like? It's something intentional, and then breaking that up into smaller tasks that you can actually do. Or so you can have incremental improvement. Like we're not looking for the wave that a resolution brings. A resolution is like a wave of change, which is not really sustainable. Whereas if we're breaking it up, now it's increments. Now you can see the growth. Maybe it's only 5%, but that's 5% more than you had last year.
Right. Well, and that's so important. I think of like the difference between diet and lifestyle change. I feel like the
Yeah.
traditional New Year's resolutions is I'm going to get to some target weight or something. That to me that's like, we can get there, but the real goal is not just getting to a target weight, but how do I change the way I live? And that's what I would want to focus on for us all. I think as we get into, as we're setting goals and intentions for the new year, how do I change the way I'm living for today and just make it, getting towards the vision of who I want to continue to be.
And in addition to that, even if you get to the target weight, like let's say we get to that goal, it's like, well, then now what?
Now we
Like we
binge and go
didn't
back to the way that I started from.
exactly. Like we didn't put things in place to make that lifestyle change so that way now it's sustainable. And it's kind of the same thing with
Right.
resolutions. Like even if you make it, it's like, okay, but okay, now it's just like something you just check off your list and go back to the way you were before.
Yeah. I was going to say too, I think there's this, and this is again for the addict. I've noticed this tendency to almost slow down, like, okay, we did it. We got through this. I think I mentioned this last time, when I go for a run and I'm approaching a hill, I speed up when it's most difficult.
Yeah.
Like when you want to slow down, especially if you get to the top of a hill, I did it. Like, no, keep that momentum. So let's say it was a successful, whatever we're quoting as the successful holiday season. You got through it. Maybe it was better this year than last year. Maybe it was tough, but you made it through. Use that momentum. Don't just, have a reward of what, and a healthy reward in a sense, but that doesn't mean take your foot off the gas. This is the time to really use that motivation and momentum to keep going.
Almost definitely. Yeah, because the brain doesn't know the difference. So the brain's like, okay, we did it. We're done here. And it's like, no, there's so much work that needs to be done after that. On the betrayed partner's end, we mentioned, visions for the future, like what do they want this to look like? And I imagine, the holiday season, it was, it's not a relaxing time. So also, the vision is usually, okay, January's here, let's go. Like, let's ramp up,
That's
let's
true. Back
go
to
into
life
healing.
again. And right. Life events,
Exactly.
yeah.
And like pointing out it's okay to take a beat. Like we can relax, pamper yourself, get into that self-care. We love talking about self-care with betrayed partners ad nauseum, but with good reason. Like it's okay to just sit for a second. You don't have to just jump right back into normalcy.
Yeah, I was just gonna. It's almost like the opposite from what we just said for the addict. Don't take your foot off the gas. Keep going. Use that momentum. I think you're right. The opposite for the partner, and especially some of it, we may have just gotten through the holidays. We survived it the best we could. There may be a wave of feelings that still come that we didn't have to because we're just trying to manage all the stuff, logistics of the holidays. There may be a bunch of grief that may be coming at the beginning of the new year that was unprocessed because there's so much going on during the holiday season. So giving yourself that space, you might not even be aware of it. Life kind of just has a way of continuing going. Family continues, kids. There's all kinds of stuff. There's polls of getting back into life. But I think what you're saying it's really important. It makes a lot of sense to slow down, take care of yourself, give yourself that time, and maybe find yourself more emotional or moody or I don't know, just tired or exhausted or whatever. Okay, listen to your body, take care of yourself in a healthy way because this is so important. Maybe didn't even have a chance to do that during the holidays.
And now that we went through the holidays, and maybe you made some of the adjustments that we spoke about in the video, like, new traditions, taking more care of yourself, whatever that looked like for you. Now, how do we apply that to the rest of the year?
That's a good point. Right.
Because Valentine's Day is right around the corner.
True.
And then, anniversaries, birthdays, so on and so on. Because all those things, you got really good practice for a month, 2 months during the holidays. So now it's not time to just, throw that in trash. Like, how do we keep that going?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Gift giving doesn't just stop at the holidays. I mean, you're right. What do we do for Valentine's Day? How do we manage that one? Anniversaries, whenever those are, you're right. All these significant dates that could be coming up. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. I think the holidays are just special because it's all crammed in one. Right. So now you have it spread out throughout the year.
Well, and I to your point too, like I use all the time. We have a portable planner basically for someone that's traveling during the holidays. We wrote it specifically in our the holidays book for travel during
Mm-hmm.
the holidays. I use that all the time outside of the holidays, because people are traveling, they're doing stuff, there may be business trips going on, the addict's going to be traveling, or there's going to be some sort of separations. And how do we manage those in a healthy, safe way? So you're right. This stuff doesn't just stop and start at the holidays. This is the time to, if things worked, we did things in a new way, and it worked differently or better than before, keep that momentum going. Let's use it. That's great. But it doesn't,
Yeah.
these are muscles, you don't have one good workout and you're like, okay, well, I'm great. It's like
Yeah.
we got to build on it. So I think that's the same. I think of that in terms of exercise as a similar type of thing. We're building a
And
muscle.
just like you would do an exercise, it's funny because I know we use the metaphor of exercise often, but I always like to think of these things, especially when I'm doing treatment with clients. I'm like, you have your physical trainer at the gym, and then in life, we have our emotional trainers. So everyone in your life is some version of an emotional trainer. So it's a lot of the same thing that you do with physical activity, except that it's like more tangible if we're talking about physical activity. But just like with exercising, like you said, you don't stop and you have to be patient because you're not going to see those effects for a while. Like you be working out hard for a month and you feel like you look exactly the same as you did 3 weeks ago when you started. Same thing,
Well,
we're
sometimes people
talking
gain
about
weight
this.
when they start working out, right? Because you're building
Oh
muscles.
yeah.
So sometimes you're like, if you're
Uh-huh.
thinking I mean, we're talking that. Sometimes it feels like,
Yeah,
oh wait, I'm doing all this work and it actually feels worse than when I started. This is not working.
exactly. So there's something about being managing and tempering your expectations. So if last year was a good recovery year on both ends, but then things are now starting off bumpy going into this year. It's perfectly fine. Like just giving yourself the patience and grace to feel out whatever your process is. Because just like with physical working out, it's not linear. It's the same thing with recovery. None of this is linear.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking too, in our memories, I will say, I mean, every partner knows their memories, probably almost every partner's memory is better than their addict, if not everybody.
Yes.
So your
Yeah.
memory is going to be good on the betrayed partner side, but we might be skewed. I would invite you,
Mm,
um, take some time to reflect. Maybe it's writing down, journaling, getting a snapshot. What does this year feel like? Because it might be helpful as a way to compare how's this year versus last year. Sometimes it feels, oh, it's the exact same. We don't see any differences. There might actually have been differences. You don't really know it. It's not like you're not seeing it as tangibly, but you may want some markers that just kind of anchor what was this time. What am I feeling? What are some of these things? Scale it if you can. 0 to 10. Where am I at with some of this
mhm.
stuff? If that's helpful, but just as a way to see, because sometimes incremental growth is really hard to see. Sometimes people
Yeah.
on the outside can see it. You see, when you see every 6 months, they'll be able to tell a difference. But day in, day out, it's really hard for us to notice big changes, incremental small changes that are really big in the right direction, but they're kind of small starting. It's hard to recognize those.
No, I love that idea of taking inventory and like looking like what worked, what didn't work, because we would all love the big wave of change. Like when clients come in and they're like, they just want it to be over and they ask me how, I'm like, look, if I had that, we would be so rich. I would just be selling the button to everybody
Yeah,
and we push the button and everything's good. And we don't even know what good looks like, actually, what that even is for each person. So really just looking at, okay, so was there any incremental change? Because consistent incremental change is going to give you much more progress than us looking for a big wave of change.
true.
Um, but actually being able to see it is definitely a big deal because you might feel stuck when things actually aren't stuck.
Well, that's an interesting thing I hadn't really thought about, but it does happen sometimes. Let's just say this was a magical holiday season. Let's just even go there for a second. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
magical, but maybe it was like, wow, he showed up. Seeing from the partner side, he showed up and was present in a way that I hadn't experienced before. I really showed he took my safety really seriously with the family or whatever. There's all these things that actually did work really well. Sometimes the wave of January comes and then it's kind of back to more of the same. Like sometimes it is like this, someone can show
Yeah.
up and do these grand gestures. And that can be really discouraging when some of the old patterns start coming back up, and it can feel really deflating and discouraging. So we kind of expect that because these like you said, these big sweeping changes, they can be real, but they're not, the real gains and the victories are usually slower and more incremental. So I think
Yeah.
I wouldn't be, don't be too discouraged if you're feeling like, oh, we're kind of going back to some of the old patterns. That might be the opportunity. Get a tune up if have a counselor or therapist,
Mm-hmm.
get back into, really getting back into community and the safe people and routines that have been working. Because it can, January can be, it's kind of a depressing time for some people anyway. So it can be, in the new
Yeah.
year. So just knowing that, and it can be discouraging.
And if we're flipping it to the addict side, maybe the partner was in such a great mood because it was the holidays and they're really into the holidays. And you're like, everything was so great. We were connecting. But then as soon as now, January comes, maybe partner's mood dips, then the addict takes it as a reflection of like, things will never be better. I thought we were connecting. We were doing all these things. And now they're right back where they were. Like, they'll never forgive me.
Right.
And having that fortitude to push through because, and all it means is that there's just more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that now we just throw everything in the trash. Like now we just have to be, okay, that was that season. We're in a new season. And how do we push through this season? Because there's going to be another season after that.
Right. And you're right. On the addict side, I mean, let's expect it, because let's say it was really connecting, a really good experience. That's also, it's also just it's really normal for the good times to be also really triggering for the partner, because there's some version of, oh, this is exactly what I was looking for, what I was needing from you in the relationship. And then the next thought is, like, when's the other shoe going to drop? It's too good to be true. And so almost like this opening, the partner can be open. This is the relationship I wanted. But then now, but is this genuine? Are you just BSing me? Is this real or authentic? Or, or this is good, but it won't last forever. So all this stuff can usually surface. It's not uncommon. So being aware of that and not surprised by it, that this is actually a sign, it's a normal sign of actually growth. And that's the time to double down on being empathetic and supportive and validating and reassuring, instead of going into defensiveness or anger or throwing up your hands and saying it's never going to be good enough for you and you'll never get over this. And, those things you might be tempted to do. This is the time to really double down with compassion and support and validation and empathy.
And I think that's a great point that you just said, like, this is a good sign of growth, because growth feels yucky and nobody wants to sit in that. No one wants to sit in the yuck of things. It feels better to, be in this blissful space, even if it's not real. So knowing that growth, this is actually a sign of growth, that we're going somewhere, is great for people to know, so they know where to place this when this is happening and not get so discouraged by what's in front of them.
Yeah, you said it earlier, and it's so and I know I do this too. I think it's human to want growth to be linear, and each day, I wish it worked that way. I really do, because it can be so disheartening when you see the growth and then it feels like a curveball comes in, or we're sidestepping something, or it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step sideways, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward. And it feels like, it's hard. That's really, really difficult. So having other people, why we're trying to do this, to have support, that this is understandable and normal, and it's expected. And it's growth. It doesn't mean we're going backwards.
Yeah. It makes me think of, children or babies, like when they're growing, they hurt. Like it's actually painful to grow. Like you can actually feel it. When my daughter loses a tooth and a new tooth coming in, I'm like, oh my God, I remember my wisdom teeth coming in and how much that hurt. Like, so can you imagine your whole mouth coming in at different times? Like that's growth.
Bones
and
sticking
it is
through.
painful.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Right. Like that can't feel good. And it's the same thing on an emotional level. Like it's not going to feel good. But if we can get to the other side, you have a full teeth of brand new brand new teeth in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. It gets to the other side. And now we are, connecting better, still moments of adversity, but now we're approaching it differently. We have a different outlook. Perspective is different. Like it's an opportunity for change and for something that, I would assume that both people want.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a reframe, especially for the addict, because a lot of times the addiction surfaced as a way of the person not being able to handle pain or discomfort
Mm,
or life. So
yes.
the addiction shows up and says, I have a solution for you to get out of this pain or whatever you're in. Um, the problem, of course, is, and I don't think, I'd love to know if anyone's seen any data on this, but you don't have grief work is always going to involve pain. Just like you said, growth is always
Yeah.
going to have pain,
Yeah.
and grief is painful. So it's, especially for the addict, just understand this is the opportunity right now to show up and sit in the pain instead of running from it. And that's going to make so much of a difference for the relationship. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be messy and difficult, but the more you can show up and support your partner in the grief, the more that you guys can start to heal as a couple and shift from, this my grief, the partner grief experience to now our shared couples grief experience. The more you can actually heal and become a safe haven in the relation as a relationship, to move forward from. So it's counterintuitive, and it's going to take a lot of retraining, but that's the path forward.
And it's great for their recovery. Like, hey, I can actually sit in this and the world didn't burn down.
Right.
Like I made it to the other side and, whatever it looks like on the other side of that grief, or in that moment, I should say, I sat in that moment and everything was okay. So that helps to solidify the new rewiring that is going on in your brain.
Totally.
Um, so I can't think of anything else when it comes to the new year. So I feel like it's more just about, giving yourself grace, having intentions, planning, making sure that you evaluate the past, but not waiting until the new year gets here to do it because we want to set you up for success. And then, configuring things, whether it be like getting more of a support system or your self care or addicts now time to get a sponsor, like making those assessments along the way. And I like what you said about writing it down, like just writing down what it is. And even if you have a partner, like maybe even comparing your notes because maybe, one of you is off where you thought you were in line with each other. So yeah, I can't think. Can you think of anything else? Did I miss
No,
anything?
I mean, I was just thinking, doing that, like, this can be a really difficult but bonding experience for couples, because take in the feedback. If there's something, so
Mm,
let's say the you as a betrayed partner, there's some things that you've noticed that would actually help this you or the relationship move forward. As the addict, if you're doing this and you're kind of reflecting on what could be better for the year, that's a huge opportunity, because your partner's saying these are the things that, don't take it. It's tempting to say, it's never good enough and I'm a failure, or, get shut down because of it. But if you can just take any of this positive, constructive feedback as a way to continue, as an opportunity to continue healing your partner and the relationship. So I think all of this I see as positive. And I think just another thing on visioning, if I'm looking to my future self, December 31st of this year, this next year, um, make it as practical as possible. Like, seriously, like what
mm,
will have to, what are the incremental things that are going to make this shift? And if I can't say, in 1 week or 1 month, these are the things I'd want to be seeing. If it's feeling too unrealistic, then maybe the goal's unrealistic and we have to make something more, I guess I'm making as tangible as possible for these things, because then like you said earlier, like this incremental growth is the way that we heal. So, and your partner will see that if you're really doubling down on trying to heal and restore yourself in the relationship, and you have this intention and commitment, and you share that with your partner and you're following through with it. That's going to rebuild safety and trust for the relationship, hopefully build more dependability and in you, and that will help the relationship heal too. So, not easy, but I think that the difference between just these pie in the sky resolutions that nobody lives up to versus, okay, what And don't undershoot it either. That's not like, oh, I'm just going to do something pretty easy. Let's do some stretch goals, of course, but we have to work backwards and say, what am I going to do to build up to that? Because I have to, that's going to take training to do.
And in addition to that, if we're looking at it in a more practical way, it can be something as simple as, what is 2 things I can do this week that moves me towards that goal in a practice? So if you can think of 2 practical things, then that means we can move towards this goal.
Right.
Or if, let's say, if you can't think of practical things to do, well, then, like you said, maybe we need a different goal, or we need to adjust this goal. Or maybe your practical things are working, but then the goal is shifting, but now you're moving forward in a definite way. So then maybe we create a new goal at the end, but there's still active motion. So you can break it down to its smallest point. You don't have to do everything all at once. Like, even if you're trying to shoot like for 5 or 6 tasks a week, I feel like that's too much. Like, just do 1, maybe 2 tasks a week, and then be, building up to the bigger thing, as long as you're consistently moving towards that goal.
Can I just say something? I totally agree. Something that just popped in my head that I think needs to be said, which seems like it's going to be obvious for every partner. On the addict side, if you're making these goals, please make at least one of them relational. These are not just goals for yourself. And that might sound obvious, but we want to also make this, how is my relationship going to improve? What ways can I build safety and trust for my partner to help them heal? These are not, these aren't just for me to be a better, these are for me to be a better person, but also how does that translate then for my partner and for my relationship?
Which I'm happy that you pointed that out. And this might be a subject for a whole nother podcast, but it's not uncommon for addicts to confuse their individual recovery with relational recovery, right, not realizing that they're 2 separate things. Cause they'll be like, I'm doing all these things. Like, what's the problem? And it's like, well, none of that, that's all for you. None of that transmits relationally to the partner.
Yep.
Thank you for pointing that out.
It sounds obvious, but it might not be. So just make sure there has to be a relational component to this, especially if we're trying to make this more of, relationally healing experience for you in the relationship.
No, thank you for pointing. That's actually an excellent point. It's not so obvious. We think it would be, but it's really not. That's all I got, Dan. Thank you so much.
That's so great to join you, Nifa. Of course.
And if you want to reach out to Dan or myself, our info is in the description. And make sure you like and subscribe and ring that notification bell to stay connected to us, because we will be rolling out some on-demand resources for Banyan Therapy Group later on this year. And remember to embrace your healing journey. Every step forward brings a new hope for tomorrow. See you next time.